Hello and welcome to another Joey Unscripted. It kind of occurred to me that the whole reason why I started doing these unscripted things was to start to let my audience, how few of them there are, get to know me a little bit, because most of the time I'm being a character. And I've noticed that the last few videos, they've been very heavily edited. And one of them I was just acting out and being silly. So I thought it'd be, better just to do a bit more of a low-key thing, very, very minimal edits. I thought I'd talk about something I'm interested in, because the last few videos, specifically the last few videos, have just been like kind of more controversial subjects. And I kind of want to do something a bit more, I want to talk about something I like for a change. So that's what this is going to be. It's not going to have any sort of structure. These videos, Joey Unscripted never really does. But hopefully you like this, and if you like more, let me know. I might start talking about other stuff. Now, I never really get to talk about this, because normally I'm talking about movies and stuff. I never really talk about books. But I don't want to say I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, because I'm kind of a big fan of everything. If you kind of like look at my history, I like a lot of things. I go through different phases during the year. I'll be like really into Batman, or I'll be really into this. I'll be really into that, and it's kind of been my whole life. I'll get really passionate about something for a couple months, and then I'll move on to the next thing. But one thing that's always remained kind of consistent was I've always been rather fond of the character Sherlock Holmes. And I never really talk about this, not because, I don't know why. I know why, actually. This is going to be a terrible video. I never really had anyone to talk to about it. I love the character. I have since I was a little kid. But I never really had anyone to talk to about it, because no one else really cared. The most I've ever talked about Sherlock Holmes in my entire life is actually just recently, because of the new TV show Sherlock, or I guess the old one, since it just ended. But I've always really had kind of a fascination for the character and characters like him subsequently. I think he is. In literature, I think he's one of the greatest characters ever, and I don't mean that as a hyperbole. I think that is just a matter of fact. His longevity and his ability to jump from medium to medium and still stay relevant is any indication of just how important this character is. And I don't want to give the impression that I'm just this huge Sherlock Holmes aficionado. I'm not. I don't want you to think that I'm I know everything about Sherlock Holmes. I really love the character, but I've only read a handful of the books. I read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Hound of the Baskervilles, Memoirs, and Return. And I have not read Casebook. Actually, I just read Study in Scarlet for the first time just recently. I may have read Sign of Four. I'm not sure. It's been so long. But I've loved this character since I was a kid, and it's difficult for me to pinpoint where I started getting interested in this character. It might have been with The Great Mouse Detective, honestly, but I don't remember. But I loved Sherlock Holmes since I was a kid. I used to actually run around with one of those newsy hats, the ones that Aficionados Chris wears. I used to pretend that was a deer stalker, and I used to run around pretending to be Sherlock Holmes with my cat. My cat was Watson. I wasn't a lonely kid, it's just no one else was interested in Sherlock Holmes. So my cat was Dr. Watson. I'd be like, "Elementary, my dear Watson," and he'd go, "Meow." But I always just had a fascination for the character, and I like characters like him to the point, I think I've always been more drawn to the short stories over the novels. I liked Hound of the Baskervilles, but there's something I like the easy, digestible like stories that you can hop from one to another in the short stories. One of my favorite stories is The Adventure of the Dancing Men. I really like that story. Oh shoot! Now that I got a video on me, I'm kind of blanking on some of their names. That always happens to me. I think it happens to a lot of people once the camera's on. You start blanking on names. Adventure of the Dancing Men. Shoot, I can't think of the other one's name. I feel like an idiot. But when I initially started reading Sherlock Holmes, it was in a book that looked just like this. And I love this edition of the book, the edition of these stories, because they come with the original illustrations. I love that. I'm not sure, can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. It comes with the original illustrations. Unfortunately, it does not come with all the stories. So just recently I picked up this, which is labeled the Complete Adventure. Oh, never mind. It just says The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and Other Stories. This comes with everything, I believe. It comes with The Last Bow, which is the final Sherlock Holmes story, or like, I guess I've never read it. But it's a story about how he gives up and becomes a beekeeper. Spoilers. Yeah. And the thing I don't like about this one is it doesn't come with the original illustrations. And I looked where to buy one with the original illustrations because it's something I like. And you have to pay through the nose for it. You either get them with no pictures, get some of them with pictures, or pay a couple $100 for a really nice leather-bound set that has gold imprinting on it. Let's put this on there. But I've always, as a kid, which is not so much true now, but as a kid, I used to be really into classical literature, which is very, very bizarre because I had severe dyslexia as a kid. Severe, to the point that I could barely read. And this is probably like, it's probably not a big deal now for some of you, but like in the 90s and early 2000s, teachers would actually say that I don't believe in dyslexia. And they would refuse to give me the extra assistance I needed. I get a lot of questions about why I wear yellow glasses. The yellow actually helps cut down on some of the problems that are brought up with my dyslexia. I remember I basically kind of taught myself how to read because my teachers were so... They did not want to teach me the way I needed to be taught. And I remember in high school, I was just working overtime. When all my friends were having fun their senior year, I was working overtime to try to overcome these personal problems. And I problems with my dyslexia. I actually found out on my own, with no help of anyone else. I Googled what helps with dyslexia. And there's many different kinds of dyslexia. My form of dyslexia with the front and back letter look fine, but all the letters in the middle look like mixed around. Kind of like an optical illusion. And it's brought on, for me personally, it's brought on by the black and white on the paper. It kind of looks like an optical illusion to me. And the yellow glasses help cut down on that. It was actually recommended I wear blue glasses, but I personally found that yellow worked better. So, and then over time it just kind of became my trademark, which is funny because I used to be really embarrassed by these. But as a kid, I could barely read. I remember as a kid, I was getting called like retarded and stuff, and it was getting me fun because I couldn't read. So I was like, I can read, I can write better than most of these other students. Why can't I read? So I picked out the biggest, fattest book I could. And it just happened to be the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I read that like second or third grade. I'll fully admit I didn't comprehend a single thing in that book, but I read it cover to cover, just to prove that I could. But as in my youthful days, I was really into classical literature. I loved H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. I used to read those stories over and over and over again. I love 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Mysterious Island. The War of the Worlds is one of my favorite books. But I think that's kind of like where a lot of these things... I remember as a kid, my grandma used to read me the King Arthur, the Excalibur story. And she used to have to censor it for me and be like, "That's not what it says, Grandma." And she's like, "Shut up, you can't read." But I used to be really fascinated by that. I was into a lot of like those classical authors, except for... I never got into Mark Twain. I liked Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, Charles Dickens. I really liked Charles Dickens as a kid. But as I got older, I kind of got more... I kind of went more towards the TV and entertainment, because that's where my interest started to go. I started wanting to be a filmmaker myself. And, it's kind of weird, like, all my other friends were talking about, like, I don't even know what they were talking about. I was kind of in my own little world a lot when I was a kid. And here I was, like, really into Sherlock Holmes and talking about, like The Tale of Two Cities and stupid stuff like that. But I've talked enough about the books. I think there's no structure to this video. I apologize, but I really want to talk about... Oh, and just to go with that, I'm not this huge Sherlock Holmes fan. I have... This is most of my Sherlock Holmes collection. I have a couple comic books of Sherlock Holmes, and that's it. I'm not sure if you can see it, actually, because it's the black and white. Yeah, you can't really see it. There's the two books. I have two comic books in the other room of a comic book series called Watson and Holmes, which... I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to call it Black Sherlock Holmes, but that's basically what it is. It's kind of like it's a modern day telling of Sherlock Holmes, but he's black, and Watson's black too, and they solve mysteries in Harlem. And I know that sounds like kind of like we live in a day and age where they're just turning characters, other races and other genders, for some. Just for the headlines, really. But this is different. I feel like Sherlock Holmes really works well in the way they did it. It doesn't feel like it's just Black Sherlock Holmes. It felt like they just created a whole world around it, and I really like it. But maybe I'll make a video about that someday. I really like that comic book, Watson and Holmes. But then I also have the Christopher Lee miniseries. Both of them are in this set. I'll just pick them up. I'll leave the Jeremy Brent show right there for now, though. I got the Christopher Lee miniseries in this collectible tin. They just released this on Blu-ray. I'm considering picking it up, but I don't know. Like, I like it, but I'm not sure if I like it enough to buy it again, because I watch this very rarely. This actually comes with a documentary on Jack the Ripper, which is pretty cool. Got a classic Sherlock Holmes TV series. Actually, my little sister, I tried to indoctrinate my little sister into my interests. My little sister loves this show. If I recall correctly, the only story they actually adapted in the, 39 episodes of the show was the Red-Headed League. With the first season of Sherlock. And then I got the Matt Frewer episodes, or three of the Matt Frewer Sherlock Holmes adaptations. And then I got Young Sherlock Holmes, which I really like. I think Young Sherlock Holmes is kind of underrated. It's kind of a mix between Sherlock Holmes, Harry Potter, and the Temple of Doom. So if that doesn't get you interested, I don't know what will. Let's see here. But I actually love seeing adaptations of Sherlock Holmes. I love seeing what they can do with this character that's transcended generations, and I like seeing what they do with him. I like seeing, like, putting him in new environments. Like, a lot of people hate the what's his name? The Guy Ritchie movies. I forget. Robert Downey Jr. A lot of people don't like Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes. I guess I could have just said Guy Ritchie's. But I think more people know who Robert Downey Jr. are. Anyways, a lot of people don't like those because it's more of an action film. I love the second movie, Game of Shadows. Fantastic. I love it. Didn't care so much for the first one though. A lot a lot of people don't like those because like it's not really Sherlock Holmes. I just like seeing like what they do with this character and like put him in different environments, different genres. You know, they put him in the future once, in the Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. I love seeing what they do with it. I mean, a lot of I'll be the first to admit that the TV show Elementary is garbage, but I like seeing that a different interpretation of this thing that I like. It's one of the few times where I'm like, yeah, do whatever you want with that character. I'll watch it probably. I've seen some of the worst Sherlock Holmes movies just because I like seeing different interpretations of the character. But let me talk about my favorite Sherlock Holmes. The Jeremy Brent, I think it's pronounced Granda. I've never actually pronounced this. ITV Sherlock Holmes, that's what I'll call it. In my personal opinion, this is the best Sherlock Holmes adaptation out there. If the very few flaws it has are products of the time period it was made. Adapting all but I think 14 Sherlock Holmes stories. Oddly enough, one of the ones they didn't do was A Study in Scarlet. They didn't do his final bow or his last bow, but they did all of them. Jeremy Brent in my mind, when I think of Sherlock Holmes, I think of Jeremy Brent, physically him from the first season of the show. He has done so much with this character that I just kind of identify him as the character Sherlock Holmes. I really like both Watsons in this show. Oddly enough, I do really like the new TV show Sherlock. I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I kind of, even though I like that it's in modern day, I kind of feel like that kind of hinders it for me as saying it's like one of my favorite adaptations or anything like that. I really like Benedict Cumberbatch. Part of me wishes they make a prequel to this show where Benedict Cumberbatch plays a young Jeremy Brent. That'll never happen. But I partly really like Benedict Cumberbatch because he reminds me a little bit of Jeremy Brent. Jeremy Brent is phenomenal in the show. It's difficult for me to put into words how much I like his portrayal of the character. He brought a lot of his own little quirks to it that just feel like that's something the character would do. Martin Freeman from the new show, actually, I think is one of the best Watsons, on the other hand. I really like the Watsons in this show, both of them. David Burke, and I forget the other guy's name. But it says his name right here, but I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's just a phenomenal show. With a couple movies here and there, like they adapted Hound of the Baskervilles, A Sign of Four. I don't think they did Valley of Fear. I'm having a hard time remembering. This is an expensive thing, though. I picked this up for $70, and I looked out for that. I lucked out with that because this is an expensive Blu-ray. Yeah, that's my favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation out there. It's actually, I feel like when I got that, I felt like I don't really feel like I need to get more Sherlock Holmes because that's the best. But yeah, this was kind of fun. I liked doing this. I liked talking about something I like for a change. Do you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation, or I don't know, just what's something that you really, really like, but you never really have too many opportunities to talk about it? Because, that was always my thing with Sherlock Holmes, is I loved this character. I loved watching different adaptations of him. But I never really had anyone to talk to about it because it's just, I don't want to say it's niche, but it's not I guess niche is the best word for it. But if you guys have anything like that, do you have something that you really want to talk to someone about, but there's not really many people that talk about it? Well, I think that's gonna wrap this video up. I'm sorry that it's not really focused. I just kind of wanted to just throw this out there. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time in whatever video that might be. Bye.